This week on Carlie's Couch, we're talking about radical honesty. How hard would it be for you to always tell the truth? Ooh, which makes me think of that movie, Liar Liar, where he was not able to lie. That would be terrible.
Oh my God.
Actually, have I watched that movie for real? I know I've probably maybe seen bits and pieces, but I can't quite grasp like in my mind the whole full plot of it. So that might be something interesting to watch if I had power.
It's one of those. Yeah, hopefully that comes back expeditiously. But it's one of those movies that I remember watching when I was little, but I don't remember it all. Like first time, so I gotta like rewatch it. I remember the
Oh,
premise.
yeah, yeah. Like imagine if you could not tell any lies at all, and not even any white lies, which is what radical honesty is. Is like just not even like if somebody asks you a question about how they look or whatever, it's just being completely honest, based off of your thoughts and you processing information. Um, I don't know. Do you agree like that honesty is the best policy? I know that's a saying that people often use. And so like what are your thoughts, Carlie, on like honesty in general? Minus it just being like super radical, but
Yeah, I do think it's the best policy. I don't feel like there's a situation in which being honest has ever, well, let me think about that. I was about to say, I don't think there's a situation that being honest has ever hurt, but I do think there's
yeah, it
a
could
point
hurt.
about delivery. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like it does, but it could help relationships. I do think honesty is always the best policy.
Mm.
So all of us say yes, but that doesn't mean people don't get hurt during the honesty, or that it doesn't hurt to say that.
Yeah. I mean, people get hurt every day. So I when I think about it, I think about the relationships and for example, like how there's some people if they were like, Carl and like they might call you your name wrong, but you're like, I don't, like I don't care to fix it because it's like I'm never gonna see you, I'm just walking past you, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, when it's people who are a part of your life or it may make more sense to put that extra effort in to be more honest, to clarify mistakes, to do all of those things, right? I think when we talked about maybe conflict management or something, I guess it has to do with a lot of different things. But based off of your relationship, then you kind of can tell like how much is it worth it for me to really be honest? Because to your point, like sure, honesty can hurt at times, but in the long run, that makes for such a much more clear, vulnerable, like based on obviously truth foundations, etc. When you are practicing like honesty with folks. So, but otherwise, if it's just somebody and you're like, oh yeah, you look great, and you keep walking, like who cares? Personally, I feel like who cares, but not to say that you couldn't be more honest, but also I don't think it matters as much.
Yeah. When I first heard the term radical honesty, it was about someone, and I can't remember, but they were talking about when people, obviously who they have a close relationship with, ask how they're doing instead of just being like, "Oh, I'm good." Like they'll actually tell them, and it's like, "Oh, it's just like little practices that you can start to build into your life." But not everybody needs that. If you at the office, like, "Well, actually, Bob, I'm having the worst day of my life." Maybe not necessary
Mm-hmm.
before like a meeting or something like that, but if it's somebody that you
Mm-hmm.
care about, like it could, be more beneficial to let people see those different sides of you.
Yeah, and even with that though, there's like different levels. Like you might not tell Bob like your wife just left you and all that, but you could be like, I've had better days, but just get back into this work today. Like, you can still like say what you need to say, without it being on autopilot. That's what we talked about a lot too, is these responses to people and answering questions, just kind of on autopilot, which is a lot of times based on, just wanting to make other people feel comfortable, or you just want to get through that, quick conversation. It just doesn't have the depth. So I think honesty and radical honesty especially just provide a lot more depth in your relationships with yourself and with others. um
Do you practice radical honesty in your life?
no, not 100%, but in a lot of spaces that we've talked about, like excuse me, like dang, what were we just talking about the other day?
Relationships?
No, like when with stuff like, oh, if somebody asks like, oh, can you come to my party tomorrow, stuff like that, where it's like I know I'm not doing shit else, but also no, I don't, now I'm not gonna make it, like things like that. Sometimes those things are still a little hard to I think I can say no to things, but I may not get into very specifics with a lot of stuff all the time. And I for sure probably still have a few like small type lies, like we were talking about earlier, that I still would go ahead and say for ease, for moving along, all that kind of stuff. But I pretty sure that a high percent is pretty honest because I definitely try to honor myself more these days as far as like what do I actually want or what do I need to say or people ask like hey how are we doing or what's going on or whatever then it's like sure let's just like talk about it. So I think in those spaces a lot more honest than I probably have been like in the past.
Are there any on this journey to honoring yourself and being more vulnerable that you feel like are harder to be radically honest, or like you notice yourself struggling
What's the question? In certain
in
areas?
certain areas? Yeah, are there any that's kind of stand out like, oh, that one's kind of tough?
Yeah, with people that are more sensitive or more feeling or emotional about certain things because yeah, I feel like you have to think more about how to like not tiptoe around it and sugarcoat, which is what radical honesty is not, right? It's when you're not sugarcoating things anymore. But I think just in places where it's like, well, you don't necessarily want to hurt somebody's feelings, um, where it is hard to be super honest about certain things, what you want, what you don't want, things like that. But other than that, not so much that I can think of.
Yeah, mine are pretty similar. I would say I'm fairly honest, pretty honest, like a percentage wise, pretty high. But I do struggle when it comes to like other people's feelings. Um, I'm still honest, but I'm working on like less sugarcoating and just making sure I say the things, and also honoring myself. So it's interesting that you say that because like advocating for my wants and needs, telling people when I'm disappointed, like letting someone know when I'm
Hmm.
displeased or what they could do better or etc. Like in those tight knit relationships.
Hmm. Yeah, because when it comes to like radical honesty, also, it's one thing when somebody asks you a question, right? Or if they're like, "How do you feel about this?" or whatever. But then it's a whole other thing when it's like something that's been kind of like on your mind or maybe bothering you, or you know how like you might feel a thing, but you're like, I don't really want to bring that up or say something. And I think that part or that piece is where it's a little harder because unless it comes up, it's like you may not be able or it might not be as easy to get that off your chest or be like, hey, let's talk about this or I feel like XYZ or whatever. I think those are the things that don't tend to come out as much.
Hmm. What are some benefits of radical honesty that you
Um,
see?
I think a couple of things we already kind of mentioned is like that it's better for your relationships in the long run because you have more trust in yourself and other people can trust what you say. If they recognize that you are very honest, that you are going to say like really how you feel about things, then you're not really questioned, and yeah, they can trust you. I think in the long run, and it's also cleaner. As soon as you kind of lie about something, even small things, it just kind of like has to be built upon more and more. It's just so much cleaner to be straightforward to say what's real to you right now, and you don't have to like think too hard. Like it's less weight on you when you're just being honest and less to think about. I think in the future because you've already said what the actual truth is.
Hmm. And when you are that vulnerable, it allows your relationships to get that deep, that communication. It opens up space for other people to be honest with you as well. It's a two-way street, so that's a big piece I think of radical honesty. But the most important thing to me is like it makes sure that your needs are getting met,
Hmm.
because if you aren't honest about what you want or need, or when situations don't fit or aren't good for you, all that stuff, then it's like you can spend a lifetime of just in relationships and things that aren't necessarily satisfactory.
And then that also is true for yourself too, like being honest about not wanting to go somewhere or being honest about just wanting to rest one day or whatever it might be. Like you still have to meet your own needs, and a lot of times we don't do that. Like a lot of times we are not meeting our own needs when it's like that should be the easiest thing to be able to do, or maybe one of the most important things to do also. But it can also change your relationships. So I saw some information when I was kind of looking for any additional for the episode, and there were some articles about why radical honesty isn't good,
Mm.
and then there's some about obviously of why it is good, but a lot of that had to do with the way it can affect your relationships. But to me, also a lot of that had to do with the way you deliver your honesty too, right? And so later we can kind of talk about that. But one of the ways it can change your relationships is that when you are practicing radical honesty or when you're a very honest person, it can be very hard to um, don't want to say deal with, but like be okay around other people who are not. So for example, like if you're going to brunch or hanging out with a friend and you just like, you can see, you can always see other people's stuff, but like you can kind of see like, man, they're kind of like really lying to themselves. Or
Mm.
obviously if they're being just a dishonest in general about how they feel about things or a person, or if they're a liar or whatever. But like if you just kind of can see like they're not being very honest, and so for you to be very honest all the time is just not a good, it doesn't mesh well. And so you may find yourself in some of your relationships kind of having a little bit more space or distance just because you don't feel like you can connect with them as much.
I think that that's huge. And I think about a couple of situations where I had like friendships with people and they like my honesty like hurt their feelings, or like from small things. Like I remember in college, the girl was like, yo, can you help me with this paper?
Mm-hmm.
Red line that thing up, boy. Like you asked for help, I'm gonna help you.
Mm.
Got it back, and she like had an attitude on her, like was mad
Oh,
upset. And I was like, I'm not trying to hurt your feelings, but you asked me for help.
yeah,
Like,
that's kind of wild.
yeah. And then so from then on, she never asked again. But I was like, yeah, you got to be careful what you ask for
Yeah,
me, because
that's a good example, because yeah, some people ask for something and then they don't really want that. And so yeah, to your point, like she not really being honest about what she wanted. So don't come to me with that. Like don't come to me with the same combos and same issues or things you want help with or whatever, and you don't really want that.
And then
That's
another
annoying.
another example that I thought of. I think that radical honesty gives you a chance to not test your relationship, because I don't want to say like do it to test people, but when you are honest, you will see where people fall in your life. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a big example. One of my friends is pregnant right now, and she's the friend that will always show up for things. If you have a baby shower somewhere, a bridal shower, she be flying all around the world to go to weddings and do all these things for people. Now she's pregnant, she can't, like medically cannot. Doctor said, nah, sis, sit your ass down. And all these friends that she has,
Mm.
like about her showing up, feel some type of way because she's like, I can't come. And they're
Oh,
just like, oh, I think it's funny that you're still going to stuff in LA, but you can't fly here for this. And it's like, bro,
yeah, that
what?
that doesn't make sense. That's sad. That's unfortunate too, because like people really forget like also how much stuff you have shown up for, and then it's kind of like selfish to not understand like you clearly see what my situation is, and then to feel kind of entitled to want you to do certain things. Like, so I bet that's very eye-opening for her, and for all of anybody who's like friends or who she's been talking to about it, where it's like, okay, like I know who I don't really probably rock with as much anymore after this.
Yeah, it's like people always remember that no, but forget about the million
Mm-hmm.
yeses and every time you did before. But all of that to say, she's actually honoring herself in a situation where she has to, and people don't like that. And yes, your feelings can be hurt if people can't show up to things, but like if you start acting funny, it's like I really feel like that shows you who, like, where people should fall in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So I think that's a really good point, that in you being honest and you honoring your needs, you see how other people fall. And also when you're honest with folks and you see that they are able to, either they want to dig deeper or they want to actually have a conversation or they want to seek to make things better or whatever, that's also very nice to experience, because there's often times where we think we're moving to make things easier for a relationship, but then when you actually express your needs and you allow them to be honored by somebody else and see that other people will honor them, opposite from that situation, that's also very much like a breath of fresh air, I think. And I think that that is very encouraging for you to continue to be honest about how you feel and the like. And it also just lets you know, like, people, there are people who actually do care about you, or they care about your relationship because they are listening to you and honoring you in that way. So I think that's been really cool too, that as I've been trying to, um, it feels weird being like, oh, trying to be honest, as if we've been like lying for
Yeah.
30, 35 years. But like, as I'm like consciously like more intentional about like trying to make sure like what I'm saying is honest and touch base with myself, like how do I really feel? I was talking to somebody today about this actually, where I was like, one of the biggest things in a journey of like honesty is making sure I'm being honest with myself. And often I'll be like, okay, I've been saying I want this or don't want this, and I think about like, is that really what I don't want
Mm.
to want? Or am I saying it because I feel like that's the easier thing, or this or that? And just trying to explore even my own, things like that. So it's definitely helps to um, practice it like with yourself, practice it with others, and then you kind of start to see like that is actually not so hard. I hope. Maybe it depends on your relationships, but
Yeah, I think it can be very refreshing, also very eye opening, and I love your thoughts. Like, you know, am I being honest with myself? When practicing radical honesty, that's a great place to start
mm-hmm,
because we it's so easy, quote unquote, for us to see it in other people. But I feel like you know when you be lying about stuff to yourself,
mm-hmm.
like you can feel it. It just feels a little different.
Yeah, and that's one of the so when we're getting into talking about how to practice radical honesty, there's some like mindset, some ways to communicate with others, some different kind of like areas in which there are things you can start to practice. And so with getting your mindset right, that's one of them, right? Facing uncomfortable truths about yourself also. So radical honesty is not just about pointing out other people and like, oh, well, you said this last time, and or what's the truth about this or that, but being able to confront that uncomfortable truth about yourself. So I think that we have a tendency to shy away from stuff, but when it's really just you and your own thoughts, like pay attention, right? I'm gonna like listen to yourself like you'd want somebody else to listen to you. Write about things. I just kind of go back and forth. Like I just like how I challenge people, or like if y'all hear me like challenge Carlie if she says something on the podcast or when I'm talking to people, I do that to myself too. So I'll be like, I don't know, it might just be because your parents like you grew up hearing this, and maybe that's really why you've been saying this, and is that really what I want? What would it be like to not do that? And like I really will think about it, and I'll really like change my position on certain things in a way to where if people ask me about something or what I think or my values or whatever, now I've at least like had a discussion with myself where I can even be honest about, you know, I've always said this, but I'm kind of thinking about, you know, what does this look like? And I think that's okay. It's just it feels better when you're like just keeping it real with yourself.
But that's so much growth to like really sit with like maybe long held opinions or thoughts or habits or anything and really be like, actually I can change this. I don't know why I do this or you know,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But one of the things they said, like in your mindset, like observe yourself lying. So kind of go throughout
Mm-hmm.
your
It'd be
day.
all day.
And bro, and I look, I'm excited because I'm like, shit, I'm about to see how much I be lying while I'm talking mess. But
All day.
they said most people lie often, every day, you know, especially during casual conversations. So notice when you lie, maybe write it in your phone, jot it down, think about it, and kind of sit with it. You might be surprised
Mm-hmm.
how often you're doing it. And it could be enlightening to think about how often other people around you might be lying about stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
But really reflecting on where you lie and what you think that gets you to.
Yeah, and like they were saying, like, it's really that casual stuff that be hella lies because you're just not even thinking that hard. So from what Carly said earlier about like how you doing to you might be like completely unprovoked. Like when you're writing an email and you're like, um, yeah, you know, I'm almost done with XYZ. We'll get that to you. And it's like you know you haven't started. Just like stuff that's I don't know, you just saying that.
Unprovoked. Why we do
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. And even with stuff like that, I'll actually try to catch that too, to where in my email I will say, I just won't say extra stuff. Like I think that's it too. When you catch yourself talking a lot, when you're writing an email and it's doing the most, and it's just like, yep, I do still need to send that to you. I'll get it to you as soon as I can, type thing. That might even be a lie, to be honest. I don't know, because you might say that and then go to the movies, like I did the other day. So it really is a lot of little lies, and I think if you really think about it, you'd have to super be conscious though to think about it. But if you really spent a day think about all the things you're lying about, then I don't know, that could be real interesting. And especially with certain people, that might be a good thing too. Noticing like, oh, when you talk to your parents, you might be lying hella because you know certain things you just not really, and also considering lies are just not the whole truth. It's a
Mm-hmm.
sugarcoat, all that, right? So if you're um somebody calls you and is like, oh hey, what'd you do this weekend, and you just you know oh I was just chilling, like it's still not really radical honesty if like you know you don't want to say certain things to them because they're gonna judge you or say something else or whatever, right? So it's like all of that stuff, all of that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Another mindset thing with practicing radical honesty is recognizing like the actual downsides of lying and of sugarcoating. Part of which I think we already said, as far as um, you may be doing a disservice to the other person who asked you a question. You may be outing yourself out of getting support from other people if you're kind of sugarcoating or lying about things.
Mm-hmm.
You may be setting yourself up to be undependable or to be seen as undependable if you're always like, yeah, I'm gonna get that to you. I have, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, but this is on my heart. So, so December 2022, I ordered some clothes from this young lady on who had a viral tweet on Twitter, and I was like, well, this is kind of fire. She crochets a lot of stuff, so she like uses yarn and makes like a lot of little pieces. They're all fire. I went on the site, was like, bet. Got a toboggan, I got a kimono, and I got this little top. Cool, I understand she got to make it. So, and I think on the site at the time, I think she changed it. Then she was like, oh, give it like 3 weeks before I send it out. I was like, bet, I'm not in a rush, whatever. Yeah. It is almost March, and I do not have that stuff. And so, I forgot about it, right? So, right before my birthday, at the top of February, I sent an email because I got one of those like, thanks for your order, whatever. So I sent an email like, hey, can I get an update on this? Hey, love. Oh, first of all, before that, she was like, hey, it's gonna take me 3 weeks. So she said it, right? So that's the problem. Is like when you said it, I didn't say that. She's like, it's gonna take like 3 weeks for me to make the other two things, but the toboggans are already made. You want me to go ahead and send that out? I was like, sure, go ahead and send that out. And I'm cool waiting on the other stuff. Don't have no hat. So that was December. So didn't get that. Then come February, I forgot all about the order, and I emailed and was like, hey, what's the update on the order? Hey, love, it got shipped out and should be there and whatever. I was like, okay. I looked at the tracking, and the tracking says label created, and that's it, nothing else. I was like, well, it just says labels created, so it doesn't look like it shipped out. And then she responds back and is like, hey, love. They always talk about, hey, actually, it got sent back to me. I put it in another box, and I just sent it out again. It should be there. And she's saying dates and same times and stuff. It was real, giving real like your chick is in the mail vibes. And I'm like, sis, just like when it's out for real, just let me know. Like I still don't even care, but it's just like now I'm just annoyed because you keep saying shit and it's not here. So then she's like, oh, I just checked the tracking. It should be there tomorrow. That was like a week ago. And I was like, girl, like what's really going on? Like you don't got to do all that. Or if you are, like it's not showing on my side because I'm like, well, I checked the tracking and it still says label created and I don't have anything. And if I check my email right now, it's probably like, oh, it says it might be there tomorrow. So I'm like, just stop. Like to me, that's hella annoying. I don't even remember what the point of me saying the story was, but like just unnecessary. Like just either be like, hey, it's gonna be a while, whatever. And then I got annoyed because then I saw on Twitter she talking about, a lot of people kind of upset because they don't realize how long the pieces will take. And I'm like, you the one who told me 3 weeks, and then you told me this, and then you told me this, and then you told me this, and then you told me that. If it was 6 months, then it needs to say 6 months. And I think on her site now, it does say some crazy number, like how many months it might take to get your order, which is like, that's fine. But you told me 3 weeks and you told me this and this and this and this, and none of that stuff's coming out true. And so even though if I ever get the pieces, I'm like, oh, this is nice, but also I'm not going to be pressed to necessarily support her because it's like, I get the growing pains of business and all of those things. So I understand, like, I'm not trying to be extra. I'm not about to go online, like, talk crazy. I'm not even really trying to talk crazy about her now. It's just, those things matter, and they keep you from being able to trust other people, and it's just not necessary.
And they can burn bridges. So a big thing about radical honesty is communicating directly.
Yeah, like low key, I wouldn't even want to like tag her on the stuff if I do get it. Like, yeah. I'm going.
But that's so actually, me and one of my other friends who has a business was talking about that the other day, because like whenever something is running behind, it's always better, and this is clients, products, whatever, to let them know instead of have them reach out to you, because that always feels worse.
Because it was like 90 days later, I reached out.
But even crazy, but even with like proposals and stuff, if you late on something, say, hey, I know I'm running a little bit late. I'll get this to you X, or I will update you when I'll send it, or something like that. But
it'd be feeling real bad in your chest when somebody's like, so where is this at? Like, you'd be like, shit.
And the thing is you really thought about it, and you thought about them, and you knew this shit was late, and you just didn't say anything.
You knew it was late.
That's the issue with it. And so practice communicating directly. Yeah. And this can be with your spouse, with your business people, etc. If it's with your spouse or your friends, you can let them know if this is something new you're trying, that you're practicing radical honesty, because all of a sudden you being so candid really could hurt their feelings, and they'll be fucking surprised. And so like let people know. But I would say like anytime in business, just try to be as upfront and let people be abreast of what's going on.
Yeah. So, okay, we talked about some mindset stuff and preparing yourself for like thinking about radical honesty and what that looks like. But with communicating with other people, what Carlie just said is like, let people know. If you have like really close friends, really close family, romantic relationships, like let them know like, hey, I practice radical honesty. So I'm really going to put in the effort to like, just be completely honest about everything. So like, it doesn't feel crazy. And then second, and this is probably the hardest thing, is actually confessing when you lie. And that could be just as simple as one of the examples I saw, they were like, yeah, if you were in a meeting with a bunch of people, and again, during a big meeting, let's say somebody's presenting something, you're like, yeah, that's great. Like that's another one of those like just you
Like
lying,
why
but it's
lie?
just like, it's a little whatever and it doesn't seem like it matters. But radical honesty means later on, I'm like, Carlie, let me talk to you real quick. Like, I ain't gonna hold you. I did say I know I said your proposal was fire in the meeting. I didn't really want to throw you out there in front of everybody, but I think there was a couple of things like we should kind of work on with that. I feel like it was missing a little this and that, and so to actually be like, I know I said this, but actually that, or if somebody
Mm.
asks how you doing, you're fine, and then later you like crying at your desk and like doing down bad, you be like, man, you know what, LaShawn, like I told you I was doing good, but obviously like, I'm not really doing good. It's just like you could backtrack. You could backtrack.
Mm-hmm.
So if you find you've told a lie, stop and confess because it comes real natural. Like just being like, yeah, girl, like real natural. So it's easy to be dishonest, but without it getting out of control, you can come back and backtrack and say, actually, this. And you can even tell people like, yeah, I didn't really want to hurt your feelings then,
Mm-hmm.
but this. And I think that's still is that still practicing radical honesty, even if like during the meeting, you're like, okay, cool. Or maybe during the meeting when they're like, oh, is anyone have feedback about this? You're like, Carlie, yeah, I'm gonna hit you offline
Yeah, there
because
we go.
I have a few thoughts, so I'm gonna hit you offline about it. Or if it's just you and that person, you can say, well, actually, I'm having a couple thoughts. If you want to hear, if you want to hear some of that feedback or whatever, right? But there's a way to do it that's not completely like shattering people. But yeah, backtrack. I think I've done that before too. I'm like, yeah, actually, I know I said X, Y, Z, but yeah, low key, you are kind of blowing me, like, because it's real easy when somebody also says stuff to you, like, are we good? Like, you seem kind of like you kind of got attitude with me, and you be like, no, that's straight, it's whatever. I'm like, yeah, I got it. I do actually got an attitude, but sometimes you don't know. Like, I told him too. I was like, sometimes I don't really know how to like what exactly is going on, but I know you're right. Like, let me not act like I'm not feeling some kind of way, but I got to think about how to you got to talk through it sometimes.
And that's helpful, I think, in those situations too, because people know that something's different,
Yeah.
and you're kind of gaslighting them by saying nothing is different,
Yeah.
even unintentionally, right? So I'm practicing saying something changed, and I don't know what's going on. I'm processing, but I'll get back to you. Like, actually, I'm not mad at you. If something's off inside me, we'll talk about it later. Whatever. But just kind of like putting that out there.
Yeah. Or one of the things I'll do that's not radical honesty is if I feel like I know it might be kind of my hormones making it a little extra, but it's something still kind of bothers you. But I'm like, you know what? It's kind of just me right now. Like I'm not, it's not that deep. But I could still say like, well, I think it's being exacerbated, but this thing, like I could still be more honest about it.
And I think that that's another
You
important
just don't
point.
look like you're like burdensome and bothering and like complaining, all that.
And radical honesty, sometimes it be like that, and sometimes that's okay, but you never get what you want, you know what I'm saying, unless you talk about it. And so another part of that direct communication is to express yourself directly. And so like noticing when you're in those situations, like, you know what, yeah, my hormones are tripping a little bit, but when you said it made me feel like this when you did this, it would make me feel better if you did this, or I think we should talk about this. Like, you have to kind of practice that direct communication. And I feel like this can only help relationships. Like, it only does if you're self aware, know where you are, know what you want, what you need, and then tell someone that. And that gives them the opportunity to buy in, to step up, to step off, to do whatever they need to.
Yeah, I'd be shook because when I began asked like, hey, is something going on? What's wrong? I would like the opportunity to make a change. And I was like, oh, I was like, all right, let me think about it. Because I'm like, I don't really know. Like I'm just tripping a little bit right now. But it's something kind of bothered me, but like I can't quite I don't know. Sometimes it just be the vibes be off and you just be annoyed with people.
Yeah.
And it's not like the craziest thing. So it's like whatever. But I was like, okay, I like that. Like you want to know. So you can do something different. Appreciate it. But give me 3 days and I'll be back. Also, when it comes to radical honesty, it's important to consider and think about minimizing hurt feelings. So one of the things you can practice is practice being good at or better at handling honesty yourself from other people. So if you start being a little more honest with folks, you might notice them doing the same with you. So you gotta be able to take that too, right? Don't be that person who's always like, yeah, that dress makes you look fat, and then as soon as somebody says something to you, then you're like going off or trying to fight them or like just not, being defensive, whatever. So it's a good opportunity for you now to be able to receive that. So if you get like harsh feedback, you can respond with gratitude, right? Like as in, like with that paper, if I asked you, how do you feel about this speech or like something I wrote or whatever, and you're like, yes, this ain't it, then you know what? I appreciate you for looking at this. Thank you for telling me, like, what can I do different? Let me check these notes. Like, you right, this is not my best work. It's really hard to do that, but it actually feels really good to not be defensive. Like in those moments of you being like, you know what, this is not good. Like I definitely did write this in 20 minutes. I could do better. Uh, and it just feels better to like express those things in that way.
And while honesty can be radical, it really doesn't have to be rude, blunt, or deliver like, yeah, this shit sucks, and like throw the paper in their face. Literally, what I did was I was like, hey, I looked over it. If you have any questions, if I can help you with anything, let me know.
Knowing that whole thing was red.
Man, but look, that was me trying to be, honest and kind. Instead of being like, girl, this is great, and then turn it in and come back with an F. I'll be a bad friend.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. Another thing when it comes to making sure you're not hurting people's feelings is don't make demands of people. So your honesty is your perspective, but you can make requests for what you want and what you need. So, for example, it says, do not say to your spouse, you need to have your phone off when we're together. But you could say, I'd appreciate it if you could be on your phone less often when we're out. Like, and actually, I have that conversation all the time with people because, I mean, we all kind of do it. But it's just a difference in how you frame that and phrase that for other people, because now I'm letting them know, and using I statements is a big thing too, but like I'm letting them know, hey, I feel like you're not really seeing me out while we're out on this date right now. Can I, do you mind putting your phone up for a little bit? And I think that when you express it that way, it gives them the agency to be like, yeah, you know what, like let me give you more of my attention right now, as opposed to like, you better put that phone up, or I better not see that phone today while we out, or whatever.
Are you
Like
always
just
on
practice.
your phone?
Yeah, and then that's being passive, right? Which is also very easy to do, is be passive. Because I be catching myself doing that too. That's after you done said something, or actually most of the time is when you've thought it a million times, but you didn't say anything, so they actually don't know. But now you got an attitude, so yeah, like speak up. Speak up, speak out, let people know how you feel, what you need, what you want, and see how big of a difference it makes. I would say first try to see like how much you be lying yourself in a day. You might be surprised.
Man, look,
you might not.
That's true. You might not already know, but I'm gonna try that this week. So hit us at Carlie's Couch. Let us know if you're gonna see how much you be lying, and if you're gonna start practicing radical honesty. Also, if you already practice and have more tips, hit us with those too. Because, like I said, I'm 90% honest, but I'm working on those little ones that I don't be thinking about. That just like when my mouth gets to running before my brain catches up, and I'm like, wow, you lied 3 times for no reason in this email.
That's what it is too. Especially when in times when you may start to be feeling like a little anxious, or there's some other feelings, like when you feel like you need to kind of prove something or whatever, like the times when you just start talking and you be like, later I'm like, damn, I was talking too much. Or like I always admire people who can speak and they seem very chill, and like every word went through their head first and then came out, and it makes perfect sense, and they didn't say too much and they didn't say too little. And sometimes you just don't be that. So which is also why I kind of like texting a lot more, like, than talking to people in meetings on phones and stuff. Like I like email and text because I can clearly see like the things and then be like, nah, take that out, or let me change this. But sometimes if I just get to going, I just be going. So that's something for me to watch out. So Carlie, as we end out, so what are your thoughts moving forward with radical honesty? Is it something that you think you want to try to apply? Like it might not be for everybody. Do you think it's something that would work for you?
Oh, absolutely. I think this is part of my growth in like honoring myself and what I want and what I need, and showing up like better for myself. Because I find it real easy to like people pleasing. You don't really ask for what you need and do stuff like that. So it's real easy to brush that stuff off. But to actually go back and say, actually, I did lie. I'm not okay. That really hurt my feelings. And I need this or whatever. But also to not even lie about the small stuff. Because that be setting me up for an L too. Like, saying stuff's gonna be done when it's not, saying I'm gonna go to
Mm-hmm.
this thing and I'm not. Like, those things. Like, because that always makes you feel bad. Like in your chest, you be all like, they reached out and I didn't do a thing. And so I think radical honesty will help me better honor myself and to like protect my own feelings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it can too. My only thing to all the listeners would be to remember that it's not just giving it, but receiving it. So, again, think about how well you can receive honesty and how you receive honesty from people, because that's a big part of it as well. So, it's not just about like you want to call everybody out on their stuff all the time, but like, how do you deal with that same, that same behavior? So, keep that in mind too if that's something that you want to work on or try.
Mm-hmm. And this week's question of the week, Lex, what could you give a quality 60-minute talk on with zero notice? Like,
60
here's the
minutes is a
stage.
long
It
time.
is a very long time. Maybe 45.
Yeah, I could talk about a few things probably. 60 minutes, I could definitely talk about I could talk about my work. So I could definitely talk about social media and networking and the use of like online networking to grow your brand or to get anything that you want. I could talk about specific platforms and how they could be used. I can talk about the importance and the impact of uh, culture, travel, and application of exploring those things to your life to improve your life. I could talk about routines, procrastination. I could talk about goal setting, completing tasks. I could talk about a lot of things for
Love
60
it.
minutes.
Look, top of mind, I'll be brief in my head, but like holistic health and wellness, mindfulness, how to create curriculums around those things, leadership, social emotional learning. Let's see, there was something else. Oh, cooking. I love cooking, so I could probably talk about a lot of those things and the new gadgets. I bought a pasta maker. Mad excited about it. Um, yeah, lots and lots of things. Football, love college football, so we could talk about that. Travel, how to live your best life. All my lessons from self care, self love. Yeah, I mean, pretty much a lot of things. I'm a talker though, so that's not really a surprise.
So, what would you guys be able to give a 60-minute talk on with zero notice? Like you just had to get on stage right now. Let us know. Leave us reviews, comments, ratings. You can leave comments on the YouTube video, on the website, and within Apple Podcasts and all that itself as well. And we'll definitely check those out. We need to get back to reading some, so you need to get back to leaving some. And share this week's episode with somebody who's lying to you in your life this week. Send it to all the liars, like, hey, what do y'all think about this? Or send it to your friends or people you're in a relationship with or whatever. And let them know, like, what do you think about us practicing radical honesty, Stephen? And see what happens.
All right.
Oh, and I don't know why I'm on your computer like it's mine
You
because it's
good?
not.
We'll see y'all next week.
All right, bye, y'all.